Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. It had been such a promising start to the week, hadn't it? A routine victory against Villa, seemed to be back in the old groove. A brilliant night on Tuesday against Real Madrid, Anfield under the lights. And then it came crashing down yesterday, didn't it, in all honesty, where there's a million and one things to talk about and analyse. And I'm joined as ever by the renowned and the respected David Lynch. And David, I'm going to throw you a bit of a musical one to start with, because I know you like to play a guitar and do different bits. So, Simon and Garfunkel, number one from 1964, The Sound of Silence, the opening four words from that.
Yeah. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Yeah, it's it does feel a little bit like that, doesn't it? Very, very sort of negative feeling after the week. You know, like you say, the build up to it was positive and good, and kind of felt like Liverpool were getting somewhere. But then, kind of all the old failings exposed, really. And City's a tough game, but it was just such a bad performance. I think, came into it, and I kind of said in the video I'd done previewing the game that you can go to City and lose anyway. But it was the nature of it. It was so kind of depressing, really, that no real positives at all to take from any individuals, a collective performance, anything you could take forward and say it's going to be a positive in the coming game. So it was really, really bad.
Yeah, there really is minimal positives, if any, to take from this one. And before we talk about sort of the halves and things that we build up as normal, I did just want to play this for everyone. So Arne Slot was quite honest afterwards about the performance and the tactical element, which we'll talk about.
But it's also easy for players to win their duels if the game plan, if the tactics are working. But we struggled now a lot with them bringing so much players into the center of the pitch, and it was difficult for some of our players then to make the right decision. So I would first and foremost and always look to the game plan and of us and them, and not blame my players at all, because in the second half, when we were doing better, I think you could also see that they were able to win much more duels, and then we were more than a few times able to win the ball.
I mean, he mentions that word a couple of times there, game plan. But in this one, is it fair to say Arne Slot got completely outgunned by Pep Guardiola?
Yeah, I mean, he admits it there, to be honest. And I think fair enough, by the way, because I think, it could be easy to kind of throw your players under the bus a little bit. And I think he defends them there, which is what you kind of want to see from your manager. But he got outdone. And I think there's a thing about this. I'm kind of worried about how we cover this, and got to be careful, by the way, of kind of people taking that as well. That means that Arne Slot is rubbish then. But Arne Slot outmanaged Pep Guardiola twice last season. So, and I mean, completely did a job on them in the away game last season, where Liverpool were massively impressive as City had been there. And to do it on their own patch is very, very difficult. But I think he would accept, and he accepts there, that obviously they weren't at that level in this game, and the tactics they struggled to deal with, and he didn't give the players the game plan to succeed in the game. And I think that's what we saw, because I think a lot of the criticisms really of the performance, and it's like effort or energy or all these kind of things. I just think tactics-wise, I think they were just a million miles off it. And if you do that, you can always look a step short in the press. You're always kind of chasing shadows. And when that happens, it looks like you're not kind of trying or whatever. Or the energies or the legs are not there. I do think Liverpool still have a problem with physicality, but I think yesterday was a lot more about the fact that City were, as he said, putting so many in the middle to get kind of short, sharp exchanges around, and he just couldn't deal with that at any point. He kind of got better at it in the second half, but it really was it was a problem all the way through, and yeah, just not a very good performance on that basis, and the manager's clearly happy to take some of the blame for that.
And you're right. What we saw yesterday, we didn't see a press. There was no real aggression. Like you say, City stuck men in the middle, Doku and Foden coming in quite often. We just couldn't seem to handle it. And even then, when he talks about the second half and we saw better, you've got to do it at 0-0. At 2-0, we've talked about garbage time and managing the game. City were almost comfortable at 2-0 to say, well, you're not really doing anything, so go on, have the ball a bit.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it was very similar to when Liverpool go 2-0 up in the game last season, really, and that City had a lot of the ball, didn't they? And they got into areas after that, but they never looked like scoring, and Liverpool didn't look like scoring or creating any real threat. So I just thought they were mad. What is that comment there, by the way? You're sugarcoating it. I'm absolutely hammering them here. Like,
yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? God, we need to talk about this in a bit, by the way, as people's reaction to these things. But yeah, I just thought City had them at arm's length once he got to 2-0. I think you were exactly right about that. So as much as Liverpool improved, it's very much kind of a game state thing of City saying, well, we will just kind of manage it from here. And they very much did, really.
Who'd have thought that on a Monday, abysmal, outgunned, and lack of tactics will be classed as sugarcoating it. But here we are with the fan base. No way everything is at the moment. So, yeah, there's still so much to talk about. I'm going to put a picture on the screen and you're going to know exactly the incident that I'm talking about. And you probably saw Dermot Gallagher's explanation of it this morning. Now, I'm still struggling with this. I watched it again. I've heard the explanation. I've read up on the law because you're always thinking like, people misinterpret things. But the decision to disallow that Virgil van Dijk header, I'm still struggling with it as we speak here right now.
Yeah, I mean, I try and always approach it from a thing of like, how has the referee ended up in that situation where they think that is the right decision? I think everybody, I saw so many City fans say, it's just not right, is it? So common sense dictates that it really is the wrong decision. If City fans are coming out and saying that's the case, then it's clearly just a really poor one, really, that anybody who's kind of got a sense of how football should be would not really be happy with it. Where I kind of feel for them a little bit in the refs is that the rules around it are so confusing and so it's just not kind of cut and dry, is it, in terms of how they're supposed to judge this. So, you could. The problem is that Robertson, he's near the goalkeeper. He does a thing, which is, I know people are saying, well, he ducks out the way of the ball, but that is an action of sorts. And if he's a little closer to the keeper and he does a duck, the keeper might be thinking he might get on it. I mean, the fact is he's going to get nowhere near it anyway.
Yeah.
But I can see why the refs ended up there in terms of, well, he's close. He does something. He doesn't just stand there. And maybe there's an obstruction there, and I can't clearly see whether he's going to get there or not, or whether that is part of the keeper's thinking and when he dives or whatever. I mean, I completely fundamentally disagree that he affected the goal and it should have been given. City fans totally agree that it should be given. But I'm guessing that is what the referee's thinking. But I mean, some clarity about how they rule on these things, maybe just a blanket. If you are offside and you within the frame of the goal, we're going to give it anyway. So, something where there's some clarity would just be better, because it's just a shambles, really, how kind of inconsistent they are on this one. And as is pointed out in the comment there, it's kind of the one at Wolves that City get is very kind of similar. I guess the ball is lower against Liverpool, so maybe that doesn't help Liverpool, that the ball is kind of a little closer to Robertson than it is to Bernardo Silva. Again, like I say, I'm just trying to kind of find somewhere in my head to kind of make it make sense, but it doesn't really. And it just is so annoying, because I think as bad as Liverpool have been at times this season, I really do think they're having one of those seasons where things are just not going for them as well. And it's I think they had a season last season where they were very good and things went for them, and now they're kind of the other side of that, and some of the tight calls are not going their way. So it's just incredibly frustrating, really.
Yeah, especially the way it's going. We need every ounce of luck we can get. And people, you're right, because people will look at the Bernardo goal, the one for City got at Wolves. People even think back to that Atletico. So was it the first goal or the second goal when the player's clearly in the way of Alisson? But that's given and played on as well. But I was annoyed about it, but I'll be honest, watching the context of the game, my anger just dissipated, because we were pretty shy, weren't we? It wouldn't have really I wouldn't be confident to say, I know it can be different, it's 1-1, but we didn't do enough to earn anything regardless of this.
This is exactly it. This is why I don't feel like, I don't even think I kind of touched on it briefly in my post-match talking about the game, but it was such a footnote in the end that exactly as is said there is that, people say, well, how can you not say that that's a crucial moment that changes the complexion of the game? Well, it could have changed the complexion of the game is what we're saying, because the complexion of the game needed changing because Liverpool were terrible up to that point. So, all you can say is that it could have changed things. Not that it did change things, because Liverpool were awful up to that point. So, what they would have hoped for and prayed for is that it did change things, because they just hadn't been anywhere near good enough. And the fact is, the reaction to that not being given then is to just not be good again. So all the evidence we've got is that Liverpool's tactics, setup, whatever the players were doing in that moment was not good enough to get them anywhere near a result. And so I think anybody moaning about this or latching onto it, you can moan about it in terms of it's a bad refereeing decision and one you disagree with. But anyone saying it was such a crucial moment in the game, I just disagree with that wholeheartedly. I thought Liverpool were awful and they got what they deserved in the end. Maybe it could have been 3-1 if it, with a bit more fairness, but so what? They still would have got deservedly beaten, and they got deservedly beaten in the end anyway.
Yeah, it was just a footnote. There's no point hiding from it at all. And I suppose in terms of the performance, people are going to look for the positives. Is there anything we can sort of hang our hat on? And this is a difficult thing, because when we talk about pass marks for players, I mean, you can see Jamie Carragher went right after Konate after this game as well, saying when he conceded, he's at the heart of it. Is there anyone that got pass marks from yesterday? We're probably talking 2 or 3 tops, aren't we?
To be honest, I didn't even do individual performances in kind of post-match stuff, because who played well? I actually kind of thought, bizarrely, and I know loads will disagree with this, actually. I actually don't think Conor Bradley did too badly, and I know Jeremy Doku was City's main threat. But I actually think, in terms of, it wasn't like he was the one who was constantly getting walked past. A lot of the time it was other players, and around the goal it's Konate, and I actually think Conor Bradley stuck to that task pretty decently. But, I mean, God, the bar was so low. I really didn't think anybody played well, to be honest. Mamadashvili saves a pen, but it's a soft pen, but he gives it away by being clumsy. So, no real redemption there. Honestly, I don't know who played well. I didn't think anybody did.
Yeah, he'd probably be giving someone a 6 at best. It's fair for Bradley, though, because Pep even said afterwards, and people say as a backhanded compliment, but he did well. Did you not think as well in Conor Bradley's defence? I wouldn't have minded if Conor Bradley at times, because you could see it, had just gone mental at Salah and Gravenberch saying, does anyone want to help me out against this guy on this side? Like, it just seems so weird that in the last few, we've seen the shape, the compactness, even Salah defending a lot, as we saw against Real Madrid, but there was none of that in this one.
That to me, though, the fact that it was so marked, really, of kind of them not seemingly making the effort, just, I always think when it gets to that point, something tactically is going terribly wrong at that point, really. So, the way that they were getting so many numbers in the middle and getting those little exchanges between themselves. And then once they were firing the ball out of there and they dragged kind of 4 or 5 Liverpool players in, every time Jeremy Doku is 1v1 on that side. And it's kind of like, well, you've probably got to stop it at source, really, which is that being outnumbered in the middle. And once you do that, it's less easy for them to create one-on-ones on that side, which was obviously a massive part of the aim there. So, I just think it was kind of not a lack of effort or lack of intensity or any of that, really. I just, because I think, especially with the intensity as well, they'd had 24 hours extra to City in terms of recovery from the Champions League game, and they put a lot into that. But that's a decent recovery time for this Liverpool side, massively. I just think it was the tactics. If you are getting outnumbered in certain areas of the pitch, you always look like you can't get to the press. You always look like you're short because the ball's getting moved around you and you don't know who to press, or you're creating confusion. And Guardiola talked about it post-match about how they kind of did it, and I thought that was kind of what it was, really, and that was the massive issue. And the one who kind of suffered the most from that was Bradley being constantly put in these positions where he's having to deal with Doku, and he did quite a lot of the time, but sometimes wasn't completely able to. But it's I just think it all kind of for me fed into the just to getting the tactics wrong again, really, and City having a better plan that definitely came off.
It came off across the board for them. And we're talking about Arne slot, and obviously people have got reactions and thoughts on that. I mean, you're right, you got outgunned in this one. There's no two ways about it at all. People, if we're honest, they were quite happy to see the same lineup as the Real Madrid game, thinking, yeah, same into this and different bits. But it almost talked about against Real Madrid, it was either going to be a low block or a high press. There will be no in between. This one, I don't know what, like you say, tactics a bit. We seem so passive and almost happy to get a draw in a way. Surely that felt like an element of the tactics. We're like, what's going on here? Why aren't we doing either or, as he talked about?
Yeah, I don't understand why they kind of were in a mid block for so much of this, because that, again, it just did give City the space in behind them and kind of made it easier for them, because how many times did they get through? And then they did have spaces in behind to kind of hit. You know, you were always kind of worried about that, and he created disorganization. So I don't know why they didn't do it exactly the same as they did against Real Madrid, because that really worked, and City have just as many threats that they want to get in behind. Maybe he's a little bit worried that if you get pinned into a low block against City, they are also quite expert at kind of firing those ones in behind for cutbacks. So maybe that was his concern, and it's so easy to say with hindsight, but whatever he did, it just didn't work, did it? Because City were completely dominant in the game. So, and Slot himself admitted he got it wrong, so he did.
Yeah, no press. That mid block was a disaster. And then